This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Roshan Senanayake.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Inspiring Design. This is where the best of the best brands, experts, change makers, and thought leaders come together to share their valuable insights, experience, and knowledge. Our goal here is to be the missing link between education, design, and the industry. So today is all about Autodesk and the AEC, the Australian construction industry. Autodesk has been kind enough to sponsor this episode, so make sure to tune in till the end and walk through all the amazing details we're going to go through. My guest today from Autodesk here is Adam Walmsley. Adam is a civil infrastructure technical specialist for Autodesk, coming straight to you from Sydney, Australia. Adam's focus is on enabling industry to design, document, and construct civil infrastructure projects using improved connected workflows. His passion lies in computational design processes to help automate and improve design. Prior to joining Autodesk in April 2019, Adam has worked over 12 years in the structural design and civil industry, holding lead engineering, digital engineering roles on challenging major projects in Australia. So he's the right man for the job, so let's get straight into it. Adam, mate, welcome to Inspiring Design.
Hi, Roshan. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, mate. I'm actually pretty keen to jump into Autodesk because it's obviously some products that we've been using since day one at university pretty much. So before we kick on to those details, can you tell us a little bit about your story? What's your background and your history?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did a pretty good job of summarizing that there for me. But so I work with Autodesk. I've been with them for just over a year now. Mm-hmm. I love what I do. I work in an amazing team. I sit in our technical specialists team. So I sort of sit under the AEC umbrella, and my main focus is on civil infrastructure type of workflows and software. So from an Autodesk perspective, we talk about Civil 3D, InfraWorks, Revit to a certain extent, and then some of our cloud products. So that's sort of my strong suit. But yeah, a little bit about me. I've previously, before joining Autodesk, I worked for a structural and civil engineering company here in Sydney. I really cut my teeth with Autodesk products and worked on some major projects like Sydney Metro. That was one of the last ones I worked on. Awesome. And then another nice project, which I learned a lot on, was the Woolgoolga project up in northern New South Wales. So we delivered a lot of bridges on that project. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. So then one more thing. After leaving the structural design company, I went and joined Fulton Hogan Construction, and I worked on the Albion Park Rail Bypass project. Unfortunately for that, I was only at Fulton Hogan for 7 months, and Autodesk had approached me halfway through that time and said, "Hey, there's an opening in our technical team. Why don't you come and join us?" Yeah. And I would have loved to have stayed at Fulton Hogan for a good few years because the construction side of things was really interesting. And just as the project was ramping up, I was spending more time out on site, and it was going to be really exciting. But I think when Autodesk comes knocking, you've got to take the opportunity when it presents itself.
That's awesome. So you actually literally got headhunted by Autodesk.
Yeah, sort of. So a colleague, he reached out to me and he put my name forward. He got a nice finder's fee for that, and I'm still waiting for him to take me out for dinner.
There you go. You should follow up on that after this call. You just given him a shout out as well. So awesome, man. Well, let's get straight into it. I know a lot of the listeners, given that they're educators, designers, and even students using your products, we would know Autodesk. People know Autodesk because you guys are everywhere. But in your words, who is Autodesk?
Yeah, so Autodesk is a US company. I think most people would probably be aware of that. I guess in a nutshell, we make software for people who make things across a range of different industries. So for those that might only be familiar with the AEC industry, we also make software for manufacturing. We make software for construction and also media and entertainment, which is pretty interesting. So something that you guys might not know about Autodesk is that we have research hubs around the world, and it's essentially a place where teams or businesses can come as residents, and they can research and develop, focusing on emerging technologies, which I think is really exciting. So we've got a hub in Boston, we've got Toronto, we've also got a hub in San Francisco and Birmingham in the UK. And if you guys have never been to San Francisco, or if you have the opportunity to go, I highly recommend checking out the Autodesk office over there. So we have the Pier 9 research facility, and you might be able to get the tour. But it's really cool to walk through there because you see what people are developing and what people are trying to investigate, I suppose, to really change the way that our industry works.
Yeah.
And then we've also got the gallery in San Francisco, which is worth looking at. It's it's really hard to explain in words, but if people wanted to Google it, there's some really awesome pictures. But it's kind of a good example of what Autodesk does across all of the industries. So there's like a 3D printed replica bridge there. There's tons of awesome stuff. I could spend days in that place. It's awesome.
Well, look, I think most of us using Autodesk products would have that inclination if we go into San Francisco. It's on my bucket list now. So absolutely, that's awesome. So that's pretty good to understand. And I don't think the research hubs is something that a lot of people are being aware of. So I'm glad that you shared that. So let's go on to the Autodesk products. Now, what do you guys offer now? You mentioned a whole bunch of different industries that you guys are in, even entertainment, the AEC, infrastructure, civil, there's a whole array of things. So just so the listeners have a very clear understanding of your products and services, how do they service and make those designers and the employers' lives better?
Yeah, sure. So I guess at this point in time, there's about 140 different products that Autodesk have. So, we're not going to be able to cover all of them, but maybe just to give the listeners a bit of a deeper understanding, we tend to break up the software into three main segments or collections. So we have the product design and manufacturing collection. We've got the media and entertainment collection, and then we have the AEC collection. So, I focus on the AEC collection. I can name some products in the other collections, but, I'm definitely no expert on that. So if guys are using products like Inventor or Fusion 360, you can access that in the product design and manufacturing collection. And then if people are in the media and entertainment industry, they might be using something like Maya, 3ds Max, or Arnold or Shotgun. But I suppose, in the AEC collection, that's really my sweet spot. You have things like AutoCAD, which everybody knows about, Civil 3D, Revit, Plant 3D. You've also got things like Advanced Steel, Navisworks, 3ds Max again as well to do some renderings. And I guess, from the collection standpoint, all of those tools in there work together to really enable projects to be designed and delivered and constructed, I guess, more efficiently than what would be possible without those collection of tools.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. And I think, given my background in architecture, the things that I've come across a lot is Revit and Navisworks. I used to do BIM research at one of the universities, and Navisworks was one of those softwares that kept coming up. This is a good 10 years ago. So we'll get on to BIM in a little bit, but can you expand a little bit more specifically, given that the listeners are more inclined to the AEC software packages and you being the right man for the job, can you outline what Revit is about, what's Plant's about, what's 3ds Max, and all of those elements within the AEC package?
Yeah, for sure. So I think The easiest way to explain this might be through a story, I guess. And if we can, think about how an entire building project would come about. So, you've obviously got architects, you've got civil engineers, you've got structural engineers. You'll even have a BIM manager on a lot of projects these days. So I've kind of explained it in that ecosystem, and I think that might help the listeners get a bit of an understanding of that. So, if a building project is initially going to kick off, an architect would probably use Revit. They would also use Dynamo, which is kind of it's one of my favorite little pieces of software. It's a computational design software. They also might use some generative design stuff. Mm-hmm. And the idea with that is that they might do some feasibility studies, or they might look at the overall site from a sustainability aspect. And from there, they will develop their concept design. They would then use something like 3ds Max to do high-end renders and animations, mm-hmm. where they could then take those proposed designs to external stakeholders or clients to sort of convey the design intent for this particular project.
Yeah.
And then, after all those approvals happen and that concept phase is moved into the construction documentation phase, Revit will then be again used to sort of complete the BIM model, as well as all of the documentation that would be required from an architect to essentially, design the entire building. From a civil engineering aspect, starting in a concept phase, a product like Inventor, which is another awesome 3D sort of interactive modeling and analysis tool, would be used to develop, the land development or some early road design. You can also be used for drainage, mm-hmm. and then it can also pull in GIS data. So if any people are also using Esri's ArcGIS platform, Inventor has a really good connector to that. Mm-hmm. The civil engineers would also use Civil 3D to then progress the design past concept into detailed design, sort of getting everything ready for for construction documentation. Mm-hmm. They would use another product like vehicle tracking to design car parks and roundabouts. But Civil 3D tends to be that real workhorse design package that would take a civil project from concept through to construction.
Yeah.
Then I suppose structural engineers will come into the mix as well, and they would use Revit to develop their 3D structural model, or their BIM model, if you want to call it that. They would then also rely on robot structural analysis to do any structural design of the proposed building. And then Revit will be again used to develop the documentation and details and things like that could be then passed on to the steel fabricator or the shop detailer, where they might use something like advanced steel to sort of take let's say if there's some steel framing on a particular project, they will then take that Revit model, use it with advanced steel, and then develop the shop drawings or the fabrication drawings that would then progress onto site.
Yeah.
And I think sort of to round the whole process out, you'd have a BIM manager. I think a lot of projects these days have BIM managers on them, especially, government-led infrastructure type projects. And the BIM manager would rely on products like Navisworks to federate all the models together. So taking all of those different disciplines models, combining them to one. They'll do things like clash detection to make sure that there's no clashes, or they find clashes digitally before they go out to site, which is going to reduce costs and have some savings. And I guess that's the whole BIM process in a nutshell, but I think we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
They'll also, check the validity of the models. They'll do audits on them and things like that. And then I guess something I didn't sort of mention, but, we have Autodesk has our cloud products, so BIM 360, mm-hmm. And that can kind of underpin everything that I've been talking about. So Revit models can live and be stored in BIM 360. The BIM managers can access those models, and you do clash coordination in the cloud. So yeah, there's a whole sort of project ecosystem that can be executed with Autodesk products in that AEC collection.
Yeah, and that's incredible. Like the level of complexity that comes with the Autodesk products and how you guys have simplified it down so that literally first year, second year students can actually start to use it. I think that's so powerful. Now, one of the things that I've learned is that BIM modeling is actually called 12-dimension modeling, right? So this is a question that I get asked all the time. So straight from you, how many dimensions are there possible within BIM?
That's a really good question. I think, there's people out there that have dedicated their lives to BIM and everything that encompasses.
Yeah.
And I've certainly been in some conversations or in the same room as some of these people, and they are definitely experts in that field. I think from my perspective, the best bits about BIM, if I can talk about that,
absolutely,
is information. I think that is the most important thing. So, you're talking about the different dimensions, and everyone will have a different opinion, I think, on what BIM is and how it can be executed. And certainly, as when you have different projects, the amount of information required would differs from the complexity of a project. So, in my opinion, information is the important part of BIM. So, BIM, if people don't know what it stands for, building information modeling. Some people also refer to it as building information management.
Mm-hmm.
I think I is the key there, the information perspective. And I guess a lot of people also get a little bit maybe confused when they hear the word building. They think it's only relative to vertical buildings.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's definitely not just limited to vertical buildings. You also have those horizontal linear infrastructure type projects.
Yeah.
But coming back to my opinion on BIM, I think information is the important part. So we're now working in this world where data is key. We're not just, creating 2D drawings of designs anymore. We are building these robust 3D models and inputting all of this rich information that is captured from a concept phase all the way through to construction and even into operations and maintenance.
Yeah.
So for me, information in BIM is the most important thing. And then being able to leverage that information, being able to get insights out of the information that models contain, and then use that for, estimating and clash detection and, the ongoing maintenance of a project once it's operational.
Yeah. And I actually was speaking to one of the Autodesk specialists at a tech conference here a few years ago, and I actually asked him, how much knowledge do you think you have when it comes to the Autodesk products? And he's like, mate, no one in the world will ever know what we can do with this. It's just so much and constantly evolving. Well, I actually want to throw that same question at you. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that anyone in this world will ever know everything to do with Autodesk, even in a particular software?
There's some people that come close.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm not one of them. But I get a lot of inspiration from seeing what people come up with, seeing unique ways of working with our software. I think for me, being a long-time Autodesk user, so I started using AutoCAD way back in the day, and I was really fascinated with what that could do. And then that sort of transitioned into Revit and being able to model buildings inside of Revit. Then I progressed into modeling bridges and some more complicated geometries. And then, that opens up the door for something like Dynamo, which is around computational design. And that's where you can really start to make the software do things that it wasn't built to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, my LinkedIn feed just constantly impresses me with some of the work that people out there do with products like Revit and Dynamo, or even Civil 3D and Dynamo and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I particularly enjoy going to whether it's Autodesk University or different conferences out there, and just hearing what the users are using our software for.
Yeah.
To me, that's super inspirational.
That's the beautiful part. I think when you know, designers are using such a complex tool that can evolve, you can almost push the boundaries, and it's up to the user how they use the tool. So I love that. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is this relatively new phenomenon called generative design. I think it's new within the everyday society, but it might not be new from your point of view. Going back a few episodes, one of the engineers, Alex, he spoke about generative design being the next thing that architects, designers, and engineers need to be part of if they want to keep up with the curve. It's almost like transitioning from, you know, the old T-square and the set squares onto AutoCAD and then onto BIM modeling, and everyone's looking towards generative design. So before we get on to the complex details, what is generative design in your point of view?
Okay, so generative design is essentially creating a design or having the intention to create something,
yeah,
and being able to set a series of inputs, set a series of constraints on the particular design, and then letting the computer iterate through those design options for you to come up with unique designs or unique options that you might not have thought about.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of put that into some practical sense, I have seen some people that are using generative design to work out or to lay out the nursing stations in a hospital, for example. Okay, so they're designing a hospital floor.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know how many nursing stations they should have and where should they be.
Yeah.
And the constraints that or what they were trying to optimize is, you know, the amount of distance a nurse will travel over a 12-hour shift. So if they can minimize that,
yeah,
they will put, you know, the nursing stations in unique places that might not, you know, that might be different to what a human would sort of think is best practice.
Yeah.
I guess I've also seen office layouts getting designed or getting developed with generative design to optimize, you know, the views to windows, lighting, acoustics, even, same thing, distances to kitchens and amenities.
Yeah.
And then I guess, you know, in this kind of post-COVID world, I'm also reading about how people are investigating the use of generative design to optimize office layouts. So, you know, they're incorporating the social distancing, you know, 1.5 meter spacings, laying out offices to be the most effective to adhere to those rules. And then even letting the computer come up with unique sort of egress paths around a building to minimize the people walking past each other in a hallway. So everyone's kind of on that same route around an office to go to the bathroom, to go to the kitchen.
Yeah.
Really interesting ways of working.
Yeah.
I think as well, from a generative design perspective, they have been using it in manufacturing for a little while now. And if anyone wants to see some awesome stuff, you could Google the Autodesk chair.
Mm-hmm.
They leverage generative design to sort of optimize what a chair could look like, minimizing the amount of material, but maximizing the strength. Another personal favorite for mine is the skateboard truck. So I used to skate when I was a kid. I still think I can skate, but my body probably says otherwise. But the idea is that they've taken the traditional way a skateboard truck is developed, and by applying generative design to it, you can optimize or you can minimize the amount of material or steel that's needed to go into that truck while maintaining the same amount of strength. So the truck becomes lighter, it becomes more cost effective. And then I guess with, you know, emerging technologies such as 3D printing, you can then manufacture something that is quite unique in its shape.
Yeah.
I mentioned the gallery in or Pier 9 in San Francisco. Yeah, if people get the opportunity to go there, there's plenty of examples of generative design being applied to manufacturing. And that's sort of where I guess, Autodesk is heading, is this convergence between design and manufacturing. So I think from an architectural or an AEC perspective, we're only really just starting to scratch the surface of what is possible with generative design.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, we have if you think about what a steel framed building looks like now with, big I-beams everywhere, I mean, I like to think that in the future, if we were able to 3D print big steel girders efficiently and optimize the amount of material that they need, as opposed to being one big I-beam, you could imagine that, applying generative design processes to it, you could have some really interesting shapes of steelwork that, it's still serving its purpose of being structurally adequate for its design, but it would look quite different to the way we see things now.
Yeah, no, I think, look, that it makes sense that everyone is looking forward to that, and it's looking like it's almost the next big thing. I think when it comes to designers using generative design, it's a whole different mindset and an approach to design. I think that's what's almost worrying people, because they're not sure what that's going to look like. And what do you think are the key skill sets that designers should look for when they're thinking of heading down the pathway of generative design?
It's a really good question. And this is something that I have thought about a lot. So in my experience, I started using Revit, and then I explored Dynamo. Again, I've said it's a computational program that complements the use of Revit. Generative design for Revit is sort of the next iteration of Dynamo. So to be able to effectively build your own generative design scripts and processes, you need to have a really good fundamental understanding of what Dynamo is, what computational design is. Python or other coding languages definitely wouldn't hurt in that regard. I'm not a coder, and I had a couple of years ago, I made a New Year's resolution to learn Python. I even bought and downloaded a course, but I never even got the chance to take it, just because work and family gets in the way. But yeah, I think that's really important. So for anyone out there, students that are kind of interested in this and want to know how they can achieve some of these, future ways of thinking and working, I think programming, coding is key. And then, if you want to get into the generative design stuff through Revit, then Dynamo is something that you definitely need to grasp, and then move into it that way. Yeah,
I think that's powerful advice, mate, because it's the same mentality that Alex mentioned a few episodes ago, where he had literally broken apart an Amazon Alexa, taken the AI system that was speech to text, and short coded that to connect with his Python software, so he could literally tell his computer what to do. And so he's obviously next level, a bit Tony Stark, Iron Man type thing. And, but that's brilliant, and I think that's very valuable advice. Learning coding is one of the most important skill sets, I think, and it's not something that's in the eyes of designers. When you're thinking, as a designer myself, I don't think I would have looked at learning coding, but I'm realizing that more and more depend, especially if you're within the manufacturing and AEC. So great advice, mate. So you've mentioned that Autodesk is looking at these steps in the next iteration, which takes me to my next question. What's in store for the future of Autodesk?
Yeah. So just before I answer that, can I just add something to the last piece of conversation? So one thing that we are seeing a lot in industry, and this is probably worth mentioning for the students out there, is that traditionally architects will hire architects and engineers will hire engineers. What we're starting to see now is that some architecture organizations are hiring students with computer science backgrounds or computer science skill sets, because they realize that this programmatic way of working and thinking is going to change the industry completely. And that's an interesting trend that we're definitely seeing across the industry. And when you can team up an experienced architect with a young grad who's got some great programming skills, together they can just do some fantastic work. Really interesting. But I mean, in terms of what's coming to the future, or what's coming with the future for Autodesk, I did mention the convergence of design and manufacturing. So that's taking essentially a prefabrication type of mindset to construction projects. Building things once in a factory, then assembling it out on site, really being able to reduce waste, reduce time constraints. And essentially, you look at some of the statistics around construction, and 30% of a construction project can go to waste, more or less. So, Autodesk is thinking about how we can start to change that, being more sustainable with the products that we use, things like that. I guess on that same thought process, introducing things like 3D printing, also the use of robots, things like that. There's a couple of awesome examples that people should look into if they haven't heard about it. But there's a project called the MX3D bridge. I don't know if have you heard about that, Rashan?
No, I actually haven't. So this I'm just waiting to learn about it.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, because I've got my passion is, I guess, bridges. So it's high on my interest list. But yeah, so Autodesk teamed up with a few other organizations to see what would be possible with the use of 3D printing robots. So the idea is that they have 3D printed a steel bridge that is going to sit over a canal in Amsterdam. And yeah, so they're using, emerging technology to be able to design and then put together this steel bridge through additive manufacturing processes. But then they're also going to layer the bridge with different sensors so they can start to collect data in real time about the loading of the bridge or the health of the bridge. It's a really, really forward-thinking sort of approach.
Wow.
But really interesting to see what comes with that in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to check that out straight away. I think jump onto Google, guys, and it's the MX bridge, isn't it?
MX3D. I think I'll put some links and stuff in the show notes at the end of this.
Perfect, guys. So jump onto the show notes and have a look at that, because it's something that's obviously very forward thinking, and Adam, appreciate you sharing that, mate. So that's amazing. So a lot of things to look forward to, and I think it's going to scare the hell out of a lot of people, because it's a completely unknown horizon.
It's going to inspire them.
It's going to inspire them. I love it. I love it. I love it. There you go. Perfect, guys. So you're going to get inspired by exactly what's going to be happening in the future. So what do you think right now? What can professionals who are in the industry using these products day in, day out, what can they do right now to stay up to date?
So I would encourage professionals to attend an Autodesk University conference.
Love it.
So I was fortunate enough to attend one before I joined Autodesk. I was an Autodesk customer, and that was just next level. I mean, they get about 10,000 people so they've been in Vegas previously, but this year it's all going to be digital. It's all going to be online because of global travel restrictions.
Yep.
So I think that's going to give a lot more accessibility to the wider world. So definitely check out Autodesk University. But yeah, being at Autodesk University in person is awesome. I've been twice now, and it's just, you just get so inspired after walking around the halls for 4 days or something like that. People can jump on LinkedIn. I'm not saying follow me, but I'm always sharing interesting articles and posts that I come across.
Yep.
If anyone is really interested in what Autodesk is doing in terms of pushing the boundaries of generative design and using emerging technologies, there's a guy out there. He has the same last name as me. His name's Kean Walmsley, Kean Walmsley.
Yep.
And he's got a blog called Through the Interface. So he works in our research team at Autodesk, and he's got the coolest job in the world. He's basically tasked to just, research stuff and experiment, I guess.
Yeah.
He does some really interesting stuff around generative design, also using sensor data inside of buildings for the AEC industry. And there's also a video out on the web where that MX3D bridge that I was talking about, he was using Autodesk cloud platform called Forge. And we were able to see in real time people walking across the bridge inside of the 3D model on an iPad.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great video. You can hear how excited he gets when you can see the humans walking across the steel bridge. But yeah, Keen, he's awesome. He's got a really good mindset, and he does some awesome work. And I think once you start following people like that on LinkedIn or Twitter, your feed pretty quickly fills up with other people that you should follow, and pages that you should keep tuned into. So that's some of my advice there for professionals.
I think that's valuable, mate. Like, because at the end of the day, we're all going to be learning from each other, and that's when the knowledge becomes more rich. So perfect advice, mate. And what about the students and graduates? They're the future users of your product, and they're the ones who are going to be in the industry in the next 5-10 years. What's your advice for them? Because one of the biggest issues is the alignment of the industry with the education sector right now, simply because things are evolving way too quickly. So what's your advice for them? How can they stay up to date?
So for those that don't know, Autodesk has got an education website. So we give out free software to students. Yeah. And so if anyone wants to Google Autodesk education, there's a whole website there. Again, I'll have it in the show notes. And we've also got the Design Academy, so people can download educational resources and sort of start to learn about how Autodesk products can be applied to solving different design challenges.
Yeah.
So that's one way that students and graduates can keep up with things. I suppose when talking about going into the workforce and the way things are, I guess, different, just be curious and don't follow the status quo, is my opinion. I think the workforce is very ingrained in the way that they traditionally work on projects. So when grads come out with some fantastic ideas, I would highly encourage them to pursue it. And don't follow the status quo. Just recommend new ways of working, because that's what's going to change the industry. Yeah. It is quite easy to follow, what your managers or what other people in your organization are doing and have been doing for the last 10 or 15 years. But disrupt stuff. That's my advice. Find different working groups, or LinkedIn groups or Twitter groups that have people participating in them that share your same passion and your same approach to the industry.
Yeah.
And I think there's some good communities out there. I mean, for example, if people were interested in Dynamo, there's a really good online community on the Dynamo forums, and that's how I learned how to use those computational processes, is through reading posts on the blogs, on the forums. People post up scripts that are broken and someone fixes it for them. People are on these platforms encouraging each other to push the software harder than it should be worked, essentially. And that's all progressing to coming up with new and great ways of working. So that's some of my advice for students out there. But I think the underlying fact is just be curious and challenge the status quo.
Be curious, challenge the status quo, guys. There you go. That's perfect, man. Adam, mate, it's been a lot of learning today, a lot of information downloaded. So amazing work, and thank you so much for giving up your time.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Guys, that's been a true lesson in innovation for the future of the Australian construction industry. So that's it for today. Now it's time to jump on to rashansemanayaka.com/podcast and click on Adam's face to check out the show notes from today's episode. Go on and check out every one of those different links that we provided so that you can gain the most out of these things. Check out the Academy if you're a student. Go and check out the MX3D Bridge. Talk to connect with people in these groups. Go and connect and do more. And last but not least, connect with Adam on LinkedIn. Follow the amazing work he's doing and make Autodesk your Bible. So last but not least, click that subscribe button and share your love. And if a review is up for it, you can go for that as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on today's topic. Get involved in the conversation. Till next time.